I'm glad to be here. Namaskar, everyone. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for welcoming me to your to the book club. If, with your permission, Reverend Christie, I'd like to begin with a prayer in Sanskrit. This is actually a verse from the Upanishads, and it's typically used as an opening verse to many of the Upanishads themselves as a prelude to the discourse or a conversation. So, with your permission, I'm going to ask that you please sit silently. You can sit in any comfortable posture. Just keep your back straight. You may now close your eyes. I will chant Om 3 times, and then I will chant the opening prayers in Sanskrit, and then I will uh, give you instructions to come out of your brief meditation, and then I'll read out the English translation of that. So please sit comfortably in any posture, sitting with your back straight, back, neck, and head in a straight line. Close your eyes gently and relax the expression on the face. Relax the shoulders. Relax the belly. If you'd like to, you may please bring both your palms together at the heart center in Namaskar Mudra, just like this, as if sitting in prayer. We are indeed sitting in prayer. And keep your hands right here. I'd like you to bring your attention to the hollow space between the palms. Pay attention to any vibration, any sensation, anything that's going on right here. Intently listening to your own heartbeat. I am going to chant Om 3 times and then the opening prayers in Sanskrit. Exhale completely. Take a deep breath. Inhale. 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 Now I'll chant. Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditamastu Mavitvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now bend forward in a deep sense of surrender to the divinity that you hold dearest to your heart. Come back up, breathing in. You may now release your hands, rub your palms together to generate some heat, and then gently cup your eyeballs with the hollow of your palms. And then blink your eyes open and pull your palms back like an open book. Namaskar. The literal translation of this opening prayer is, may we both be protected. May we both be nourished. May we work together with great energy. May our knowledge be radiant. May there be no differences or disputes between us. Om, peace inside, peace around, and peace between. This is a verse from the Upanishads, the subject of our conversation today. And it features in 4 different Upanishads as the prelude. The construction of this verse is very interesting. It's almost like a lawyer was asked to write something in Sanskrit. So it describes a sort of a protection covenant. It says, may we both be protected, but from whom and what? May we both be nourished. But why do we need to be nourished in a conversation such as this? May we work together with great energy. What is the work that we are engaging in together? May our knowledge be radiant. And may there be no differences or disputes between us. And the question is, what differences and disputes? We've not even begun to talk. So it has a very legalistic framework, which works very well for the subject at hand, because the subject of this discussion is a very secret and sacred understanding. And for the transmission, it needs a safe place for debates, for discussions, for differences of opinion. It also needs a space for a lot of energy to flow, not holding back, not withholding, but letting that energy of the universe flow through us into our conversation here. And may our knowledge radiate out from us, from our being, into the wide universe. This knowledge should illuminate ourselves. It should throw more light, in fact, on the subject of today's conversation, which is the knower itself. Now, I expect some of you have read some of the book. It is a very unusual book for a book club, so I will excuse you if you have not read all of it, or even read some of it and give up some part. It is not just one book. These are several different books, and the books within it are not just meant to be read. These are sacred tools with which to learn to study the self and to realize the self within each of us. The word Upanishad, one of the meanings of the word Upanishad, literally translates to come sit near. Now that gives you a sense of the kind of dialogue that is about to take place. If I were a politician or a demagogue and I'm speaking to an audience of 10,000 people, then surely I will not use much nuance. I'm going to have slogan-like things to say, things that a vast mass of people can understand. So the lowest common denominator of understanding. This is not such a conversation. When you come sit near the teacher, you're coming sit near for several reasons, not the least of which is the knowledge must be whispered because it is filled with nuance. And you sit near also because that who has seen the light of the self can radiate the light of the self, and that radiation you can pick up, and also, like lighting two candles, one from the other, transmit the same light of consciousness from one to the other, which is also why you sit near. So there's a lot of nuance and preparation required to sit near. The Upanishads sit inside the sacred texts. Most of the Upanishads that we are reviewing today sit inside the Vedas and sit inside the sacred texts. Typically, in a forest sanctuary, these are being transmitted. There are rules for who gets admitted to go to the forest sanctuary. So many years of preparation and service are required to come to this conversation, which is why you may exercise nuance. You may actually disclose sacred knowledge. Why else is it sacred? It turns out much of the knowledge inside here is practically meaningless. In fact, so paradoxical that most people will understand it and throw it away immediately because it revolts against their common sense. And that's why this is sacred and secret. The knowledge is not that obvious. It is a knowledge about the knower. Modern science, in the modern world that we live, we know everything about the world outside of us. We seek to know more and more and more about everything in the world around us. But the subject of these books is the knower himself or herself. And no amount of external reading will help. You have to go within. And so these books are designed as an aid to that journey within. Not merely meant to be read and as a source of entertainment, though I have to agree, these are supremely entertaining in the amount of examples, similes, metaphors, and parables that are used. They are already quite rich. Now, a few more words about the book itself that we are reviewing. We're not reviewing the Upanishads directly, of course. We're reading the translations by Eknath Easwaran and written and framed by Michael Nagler from UC Berkeley. It's important for you to know this. Eknath Easwaran is primarily an Indian teacher into the West. He lived right here in Berkeley, and he taught here in Berkeley. And most of his education career is, of course, as a teacher of English. But here, his subject of the self is also something he did over 40 years while he was in the Bay Area. And so he's speaking to a Western audience. This is important for you to know. Several things. One, he is not a trained yogi himself. He has learned it from his grandmother. And he is therefore applying his own experiences to the subject at hand. Two, he's probably reading Sanskrit translations from other people. I have nothing bad to say about his translations. I'm just giving you as a sort of cautionary note. So he's reading somebody else's translations. And yogis read things differently from others, and I'll explain some of that. Plus, he's speaking to a Western audience, which, as I will describe in a few minutes, the knowledge within is so different and so distinctly opposite to our common sense, especially in the Western framework, that it's his job. And Eknath Easwaran is a fantastic writer. You should read all his other books. His job is to explain it in a way that could be understood by a Western audience. Michael Nagler's foreword and afterword are a masterclass in itself. They're beautifully written with a lot of nuance, but a lot of love and affection for his teacher, but also a lot of deep knowledge of the subject at hand. So this is a wonderful book, and Reverend Christie, I congratulate you for picking this book. Now, our object.
What I'd like to do is invite other people to share their first reactions so that you have an idea and we share with each other the way we do in book group, what we think about the book we have just read. And so I invite anyone who has read any part of the book to share what their thoughts are at this point in our getting together.
Fantastic.
Just raise a hand if you're up for speaking. Dilip, I'll call on you, but you already have read it 1,000 times. I was hoping to hear from some of our newcomers, if that's okay with you. Anyone? I see a hand. Siva.
This is a question influenced by two separate things, which to me are very close to each other. One is I've been reading and listening to a CD of the book called Sapiens. I'm wondering if you're at all familiar with Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari.
Okay, Siva, I know that may have a direct connection, but
okay, that's one thing that's in my questioning, and the other is, do you know anything about nonviolent communication? And to me, especially nonviolent communication is another form of the teachings that are in the book that that we're discussing. At least that's how I was reading the book.
Yeah. Siva, would you mind clarifying, when you say nonviolent communication, what specifically do you have in mind? There are many ways. I'm reading and understanding that phrase.
I would say it's the form of thinking where we do our very best to keep both the point of view, the loving point of view of me toward myself, you toward yourself, me toward you, and you toward me. And how to cooperate and utilize all this beautiful energy that is there for the betterment of everybody, without somebody with power getting their unfair share.
Okay. This is a really interesting topic. Now, Siva, I'm going to ask you one more question. So as you read this book, what parallels did you see to this idea of power-free communication in a way that is kind to yourself and to the other, and what you saw in the book? What parallels did you see?
the parallel that I see is because I'm Jewish, and I see anti-Semitism as just a power tool. It's nothing in reality. It's just a tool for power, and I'm understanding the practice that you've been practicing all these years is to acknowledge that all of us human beings have the same needs, and only by the mechanism of corruption do bad things happen. So I see this as keeping people connected in a loving way.
Seeing that's a really good observation, Siva. So the Upanishads you see in the reading, I'm sure you've noticed, they emphasize unity, and unity not merely of different races, castes, and creeds and religions, but unity of all existence.
Yeah.
And seeing the non-separation of ourselves from this universe itself is the right way of seeing. Yeah. But it's so non-obvious that it requires, teaching to communicate. Another interesting thing you'll notice later in the book, but it's in the wider sort of corpus, is this emphasis that there are many truths. And so the Sanskrit for that is Ekam Sat Vipra Bahudha Vadanti, which is translated into English as the truth is one, and the wise know it by many names.
Yeah.
And so recognizing that there are multiple, possibly infinite paths to the truth, and recognizing that the truth is still one, yeah. But you may arrive at the same truth from your destination, and I may from mine, and your path is as valid to the truth as mine is. And that's also a learning that you will see in all the Upanishad books that are out there, because they emphasize unity of all creation that's out there.
Right. And
I'm going to interrupt you, Siva. I really want to broaden the conversation and allow everyone to have a moment in the spotlight, so to speak. Does anyone else have a reaction to the book itself that they would like to share with us? Diane?
Well, it was interesting. I thought when I was reading it that, first of all, having had some Bible study, not extensive as some people, that you can spend years studying sacred texts. So I am aware that when we were reading this collection, that people could spend years on each part of it. But what I was, for myself, and what I needed right now, I thought what was sort of beautiful is the parables in there that had to do with people asking the answer. They wanted the answer to a question, and they were sent back to think about it. So bottom line is, to me, I felt the call to more meditation, and it was a beautiful thing for me to think about that. And that, I was delighted to have the opportunity to read this, because I don't think I would have been called to do it had we not done it in this group. But, the truth is, we have the answers in ourselves, but we have to take the time to find them. And like you say, unity, we're all one. We're all, so I just wanted to thank you for having this book and being part of this discussion.
Thank you. Anyone else? I will call on John.
Thank you. One of the features of the texts that struck me, and I think it reflects a generosity of spirit. There was no overt mention of sin. or even any kind of major wrongdoing. Humans aren't categorized in terms of those who are saintly and those who are wicked. Yes, the texts do mention humans who have not yet begun to seek the unity in all things, but they are not derided. I suppose the texts are meant to encourage those who have not begun to question the significance of their lives, who are merely content with things. But I like the gentle approach. In other words, I think the texts make room for everyone, regardless of the stage of their development.
I think there's a phone line that has sound.
Somebody on 510 325, you're very noisy. Do you want to speak? Now he's silent. Mary Pat.
Hi. As I said before, I haven't read very much of the book. I've really only read less than 100 pages. But I think that what encouraged me to even begin the book was my need to leave the life that I've led most of my life, which was a very didactic learning kind of experience. And I'm in a place now where I feel very negative about rules and regulations and limitations and sin. And I'm looking for ways to share, to cooperate, and to expand from the inside. And this seems like a very logical place to investigate.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Dilip, you don't have your hand up now, but would you like to share? There
Can
you
you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, as a Hindu, you think that you know all those things, actually not. And I'm so happy that I read this book. One of the chapter I'm most impressed about the date, and that is in Katha Upanishad chapter. And then that Nikedita, he's asking the god that what is death? And even it's very difficult to describe. And so when a person dies, there arises the doubt: is he still there or is he still not there? Are you there or not there? What is the difference? Who you are? Is it your ear, nose, your heart? Who you are? And books really describes that you don't have to fear of death. Death is just one journey, one destination of a big journey. And it's really beautifully described here. So if you read this chapter, I mean, first of all, you feel like you got promoted. Now you yourself is a god. The one you are looking for, you yourself, you are that one. And then once you have no more fear about dying it, because it's just one step in your cycles of life, then all of a sudden you are fearless. I mean, you can be anything. So that's just one point. I was very impressed by the book, just to be fearless. So nice to be feeling that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Reverend Christy, do you mind if I respond just to one thing that Dilip said?
Absolutely.
So, Dilip, you talked about this young boy's conversation with death. So in the Hindu tradition and in general the Dharmic traditions, the belief is of an eternal, timeless self that continues from one physical form into another. And right after this chapter, there's a chapter which is the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It begins with this example of and I'll just read. As a caterpillar, having come to the end of one blade of grass, draws itself together and reaches out for the next. So the self, having come to the end of one life and dispelled all ignorance, gathers in his faculties and reaches out from the old body to a new. So imagine this caterpillar on a blade of grass moving from one blade of grass to the other. And that's how simple we describe the process of just moving from one physical body to another. And therefore, this continuum of learning and progress. Reverend Christy, back to you.
Thank you. Siva, you have one more comment to make?
A couple people talked about sin, but I'm wondering, since I haven't read the whole book, is so what was commented on was the lack of the concept of sin. Is there also a lack of the concept of two other words, shame and guilt?
Gaurav, you want to answer that?
Yes, and I'll stitch together what John said, what Mary Pat said, and what Siva was saying is that this tradition, that's the big difference. One of the big differences is because of this approach to multiple truths and this lack of, this framework does not have a place for firm, timeless rules. It's not as if I tell you, you only drive on the right side of the road forever. If you drive on the wrong side of the road, you're just going to hell. Now, that doesn't work in this tradition because, when you go to UK, you drive, or India, you drive on the left side of the road. So it's just that rules are not given to us in a way that are time and context invariant. Rules are always to be understood in the context of time, space, and the people that you're talking to. So in that sense, there is no parallel concept of sin or shame or guilt. Now, you may still experience the shame or guilt, but that is different from the tradition insisting that you be filled with shame or filled with guilt. Why? Because of another innovation in this tradition, which is, this is a word, interestingly, everyone in the West knows. We just know it differently, but I'll say the word anyway, which is karma. Karma, of course, is what you put out comes back to you. And so this understanding that the machinery of the universe is forever in balance. What you do comes back to bite you at some point. And because of multiple lives, it'll bite you in another life. It's not a problem. You just understand that what you do comes around to you as well. And so to that extent, there's no need for shame. If you did something wrong, it'll come back to some other time. What you have to do is recognize the essential oneness of all creation and act in accordance with that. So, most Indian teachers that end up describing this say that the only sin, if you even want to borrow a word from the West, the only sin is that of identification with the self, of thinking that I am this body or this name or this this collection of money and relationships and so on. This identification, this total and utter identification with something which is so temporary, that is possibly the first and last sin. And again, we don't use the word sin, I'm just giving you an example. And so the objective in our tradition has always been to understand the knower, which is the subject of all these works. And once you understand the knower, what does it mean to understand the knower? It means that the light that illuminates this self is also the light that illuminates yourself. I'll give you another metaphor to understand. Imagine cups that are placed on the floor. You fill them with water. to maybe, a little, or maybe all the way, it doesn't matter. Now the cups have the sky reflected in them. Does each cup reflect a different sky? Or is each cup reflecting the same sky? And the answer is it's the latter. It's not that the sky has been split into the 100 cups, but that the sky is still the same. The reflecting bodies have increased. And so the light of the self that illuminates this being is the same in you as it is for me, which is when, for example, I opened with Namaste. I'm merely recognizing that it's the same light that illuminates it at both places. I'm essentially recognizing myself as I bow to you. And so in that sense, to finish that thought out, Reverend Christie, the concept of sin and the utility of guilt and shame as ways to drive human behavior are not very deeply explored in this tradition. Most of it, this tradition is about rituals and rules. The rituals only because that's the tradition, we do it. And the objective of all ritual is almost always to merge the lower self with the higher self. And so all ritual, even if you go to a temple, all of it is reflected the same way. One more thing, if I may, 10 more seconds. The Hindu tradition, when you read this, there is not much that you will recognize in a trip to the temple, because you'll see hundreds of deities out there, different shapes and forms. But I assure you that it is essentially the same tradition. It recognizes that even if the deity takes many forms, the deity is formless, the truth is one. The form that we're assuming temporarily is just a temporary form, as it is for you and me. And I'm going to stop, otherwise I'll keep going. Let's hear some other comments on the book.
And I want to have the courage to jump in and give a little bit of my creative pushback. I have studied Hinduism in my own Western way and found that the goddess Kali was the one that I most resonated with. She got me through horrific, horrible times in my life and allowed me to believe that death was a truly transformative thing. And if I became a difficult Kali influence on other people, that was just fine. I also became a dancer, and dance has been my primary form of feeling truly alive, which being embodied is a very important thing to me. I know it's just this lifetime, and I believe all that you have spoken, but I still push back against this goal of being somehow feeling disembodied. I like my body. I like expressing this way. And I felt often as I was reading that I was getting into conflict with this idea that being so attached to my body is somehow wrong. And I go, nah, no. Even as I do meditate every day, I do embrace so much of what's here, but I do a both and with it, which I'm sure you would say that's fine. But somehow the reading itself just kept feeling ever so peaceful. And I like to be peaceful, but I'm fighting racial injustice in our world. My children are Black and are in danger every day. There's so much in which our world needs to be transformed, and I cannot just sit and meditate and be peaceful. And now I'll stop, because that's pretty much all of my objections in a nutshell.
That's a great soapbox, Reverend Christie. Do you mind if I respond?
Please go for it.
So, this book and every other book that you might read, most of the articulate English-speaking articulators of the Indian tradition tend to be ascetic type people that have essentially foregone this world and have stepped away into their inner selves. There's the path of going out and there's the path of going in. They're on the path to going in, and that they happen to be the people that have done most of this kind of articulation. They're very articulate, and this is how they write. But the tradition is not life-denying, and I want to assure you of that. If you go to India or you go to any Hindu temple today, you will see a riot of colors and expression and self, because here's the thing. All existence is a verb. Everything is in motion. Everything isn't just made once and forgotten, done away with. Everything is in motion. And recognizing that, we come to the essential question that you had, which is, I have a self, and this self seeks to express itself, and I'm not going to stop that self-expression. And that is also our learning. When you're a dancer, but Reverend Christie, as you sit here, are you a dancer?
Say what?
As you sit here, are you a dancer?
I have been a dancer, but I'm actually an ordained minister, and I only dance every once in a while now.
Right. But a dancer ceases to be a dancer when they're not dancing. Then they're just the person. When they're in motion is when they're a dancer, and they're one with the dance. And that's the analogy we use for ourselves as well, which is, in fact, Shiva is Nataraj, the Lord of the dance. Of course, he's out there dancing. So the point of this is this understanding of the self, what is described in these monastic articulations, is not that you stay forever inside the forest, but it is to find yourself and come back here and then act in the world as if nothing happened. Which is to say, in fact, if you read another book, the Bhagavad Gita, it begins and ends with this exact problem. It begins in the middle of the battlefield. This is as dramatic a position as you can get. The battle is about to begin. 4.5 million people are about to be annihilated. Spoiler alert, over the next 18 days, they'll all be gone, save 10 people. We're just at the beginning of this dramatic position. And the key person is having second thoughts. He says, is this thing even worth it? Why should I fight? And through the Bhagavad Gita, the lesson is on what's written in the Upanishads is relayed there at the battlefield. And the objective of that relation is to know that you are also letting the universe flow through you, through the personality of yourself. You're doing things that are in accordance with your nature is also the will of nature itself, right? And so it ends with him receiving the instruction, do as you wish. Now, I want to go back to the comment about sin and shame. There, he's not ordered to do it, because then that would be a fairly quick conversation. I don't want to do it, end of conversation. You didn't have to have a 2.5 hour song about it. But here we go through a long arc, and he says ultimately, all right, you know the true nature of yourself, now do as you wish, which is to say, express your own inner nature. So this tradition is not a life denier, or it is not one that says do not enjoy life. In fact, in the opening book, Isha Upanishad, the opening verse of that book is amazing, because just in that verse, Mahatma Gandhi said that if you burn down the entirety of human Hindu tradition and you just leave this one verse, I can recreate the entire tradition from just that. Why? Because of this one phrase which says renounce and enjoy. The rest of the verse is interesting as well, but this is the phrase that Mahatma Gandhi took into his back pocket, to the extent that he had a back pocket in his clothes, he did not. But this is the phrase that he made his own. Renounce and enjoy. And his point, and the point here is, you can only truly enjoy when you renounce. If you don't renounce, you're holding on to something and you're wishing for it to be joyous. But if you let go, you can engage in this dance to your heart's content. And then truly the dance, the singing, the articulation is going to be enjoyable.
What I push back against is, as a mother, there are certain human beings that when they suffer, I suffer. And the more I care about the human race, the more that is true for me with more and more human beings. And so there's been a great deal of suffering, continues to be a great deal of suffering in our world. And I cannot, in good conscience, renounce and enjoy, although I do know that staying present and spending time going deep into my own truth and being present to the peace and the joy that is available to me, what we call in Christianity the fruits of the Spirit, that's important for me to do any of the work I want to do in the world. But the phrase renounce and enjoy, I struggle with.
Sure. I think what you're struggling is not, well, both parts, I guess, which is the why should I renounce an experience or something that's going on, and also what does it mean to enjoy in the face of all the suffering and sadness, right? The tradition teaches us all the practice of meditation, and I was going to come to that anyway, which is the chanting of Om and this focus on the cave in the heart right here. It is to center ourselves in our own being and tune into the underlying vibration. This Om chanting, the underlying vibration of the self is one which is truly filled with Ananda, which is causeless bliss, unconditioned bliss. That is our inner nature. It is the innermost nature of ourselves. Everything else, the sadness and happiness, comes and goes. It's imposed on this underlying thing. Our problem is we identify with the self and with the plus and minus equations that are going on. What the Upanishads say and what is taught elsewhere in the entire tradition is, here's how to tune in to the innermost vibration. Because then you're confidently stationed in yourself, understanding your true nature, and then engaging fearlessly in the world outside. It is not that you're renouncing because you've given up. It is also not that you're enjoying that somebody else is suffering. It is to understand that all the happiness and sadness is imposed upon this outward existence, but the innermost existence is very different. And the innermost, so when we do Om chanting, this is it's not related to the book, but in a lecture on consciousness, there was a lecture series in UK on consciousness, and one person in the audience asked this question: am I having the thoughts, or are the thoughts having me? And you would think that's a stupid question, but after you went through that series of talks, you'd understand that the question made sense in that place and time. In the Hindu tradition and in the Indian tradition in general, this chanting of Om and then this centering of the self leads to the recognition that everything comes out of that underlying vibration, which we call and experience as Om. And so we're tuning back into from which we are being projected. So we're going back into the self and recognizing it. So that's been an interesting thing. So I hope to give you a taste of that if we get time, and you should be able to focus on the cave in the heart and feel some of that. But I agree with you, there is suffering all around, and often I do a lot of interfaith talks, and this is a standard question because it's a question every religion must grapple with, which is, how do you explain all the suffering that's going on?
I don't care to explain it so much as to respond to it compassionately, to let myself feel with the sufferings of others. And but I'm going to stop monopolizing this conversation and turn it over to Siva again.
Siva has a question, yes.
Okay, so from what I've understood so far, it seems to me, and I'm just, I don't know how to phrase it, but it seems to me that there's no necessity for any kind of deity image or concept, and also I'm wondering how gratitude plays into this body. I see it as like a philosophy.
Sure. Yeah. It's going to be a long answer, so I'm going to check with Reverend Christie. How much of time can I will respond to the first part of your question.
So we go until 8:30 and it's 10 to 8. So we have 40 minutes left, and I'm going to stop all of us at 8:15 so you can have time for a closing meditation with us.
Wonderful. Now let me get to Siva, your question. You will notice that there is no particular divinity mentioned here. There's no form of deity or divinity, no anthropomorphization where there's a human-like personage speaking to us. And that is a unique characteristic of the Upanishads. Now, interestingly, the Vedas, all of this is divine. Everything is divine, of course. So everything is divinity. I'll say two things to explain why this is the case, and then we'll talk about the rest. One is the naming of hurricanes. If you know, this is almost hurricane season, and you're going to have hurricane alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and so on and so forth. And the question is, does the hurricane know that you've named it alpha? It doesn't care. That's how you may wish to the hurricane, wish to refer to the hurricane. And when we give it a name, because even if we didn't give it a name, we'd want to refer to it. It is coming tomorrow. It is going to cause a lot of damage, right? The way humans think is in a human to human format. And the only way we can engage with an idea is by giving it a human form, even if we're not doing it that way. I'll give you an example. The universe loves me.
Do I know what love means?
Exactly. That brings us to the question, what is love?
That's a wonderful question, because that is a big question with me.
Yes. So I'll come to the love question. So the thing is, you have to look at a deity that is anthropomorphized, because it's the only way humans understand. Even if, and in the Gita, this is mentioned, if you believe in this infinite, graspless, centerless divinity, which is all energy, all light, all love, it's very hard to center on that. It's very hard for most people to grab onto that idea. And it's easier to say, here's a shape and form, because then you can see it. So that's one part of my answer to you. The other part of my answer is embedded somewhere in the book. When you read it, it mentions the word rhythm, which, if you know, as a rite of passage, or the word rhythm, they come from the same root. And the way I explain this is, if you've ever bought avocados from Costco, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That avocado is not on the tree, last I checked. I bought grenade-like rock-hard avocados from Costco. I bring them home, and then as if on the clock, 2 weeks later, I need to throw them away because they're overripe. Somewhere in that period, they ripened, and they were good to eat. And then, of course, I didn't eat all 6 of them, so now a couple have to be wasted, right? So the question that you have to ask yourself is, who or what ripens the avocado?
Time.
Time, right. There is some sort of a mechanism that is giving the avocado signals. There is some sort of order, and I'm coming to this central thesis. People who looked at nature carefully over hundreds of generations noticed that nature is not random. Stuff is happening on a sort of rhythmic and explainable basis. So the question is there order in the universe? And the answer is yes. The avocados do ripen. There is order in the universe, and now the question is, who put that order in? And the answer is, you don't really care as long as the avocados ripen, which comes to see about what you were saying, right? As long as it makes sense, I don't necessarily need to explain everything. Reverend Chrissy, you were saying that as well, right? The point is, you don't need to look at a specific form or shape of divinity to have the confidence that everything works in a systemic, orderly manner. It seems to be the case. I'm not floating as I speak, and the time is not working in reverse as we talk. So clearly there is some sort of order in this universe. And as long as that is to be understood, we can try to make sense of it. And that's how this tradition works. Yes, Siva.
Okay, so I would name that last concept trust. Just trust. And I want to say to Dilip, it's been a few years already that Dilip hosted me and my husband Dick at the annual event. And what I noticed among the hundreds and hundreds of Hindus that were there, everybody, not just children, but everybody looked happy.
Yes. Yeah.
And Dilip, be sure you invite us again.
Always welcome.
Yeah. I've lived in the West in California for 21 years, and I keep going back to India. And every time I come out of the airport, I am shocked at looking at the people outside. Poor people have no idea of the kind of miraculous lives we live out here in California. They're walking on the street and they're happy.
Yeah.
They're smiling. They're talking to each other. They seem happy. And I'm like, I want what this guy has. They're happy, right? What is it about us that makes us unhappy? As a yogi, I can tell you what makes us unhappy is our heart has hardened. Again, this is outside this book, so I'm going to limit my degree of talk on that. But the heart here in the one we feel is hardened because our narrow definition of the self, me and mine, have taken over our concept of the self, and that hardens the heart. And I say this as not just a yogi, but if you are a poet, you know what a heavy heart is, or a dark heart, or a cold heart, or a hard heart is. It means the same thing. You feel a certain sense of heaviness in your chest. The question is, why? And the answer is because you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting yourself. You think you're running the universe. I think I'm running the universe. And because of that, there's so many things I need to take care of. The avocados in Dilip's home need to ripen, and I need to make sure that happens. And then something else needs to happen that I need to take care of. Hurricanes need to be avoided. You know what I'm saying? I seem to be thinking that I run the universe. As soon as I recognize that the universe has its own inner logic, I can relax. I can let my heart relax, and I can now surrender. And once I surrender, I'm in the lap of Mother Nature. I'm the happiest camper there is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do other people have comments to share? Yes. Yashvani.
Yashwanji, you have a question? You're raising your hand.
Yashvani, put your turn on your sound and speak to us. Yashvani? No? Yes?
Oh. Okay. While he's working through, I want to tell Mark. Mark, I love your background image because at the 130 mark, where you're sitting at the 130 mark over here, is the sacred. Is a symbol for the Om sound, and that's a Hindu symbol. And in the Upanishads, you're going to see it everywhere. There's a whole book written about this, but every book refers to this sound and this experience. And I'd like to take you through it in today's sitting because it's central to understanding this causeless bliss that it is said is the source of all being. Yashwanti, you have now unmuted, so please go ahead and ask or comment.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
This is my first experience of meeting. I'm very much poor in reading because of my eyes are bad, and I don't read books normally because I have got a AMD in my both eyes, and right eye is totally bad, and I can't read at all. Left eye I read barely, but I go on computer and have my font bigger, and I read a lot of on internet. Sometimes I go in Gita and all this. I have read a lot of times, and for Upanishad I just started. So I was interested in having and participating in your talk. Thank you. I will try more and more, and I will try to understand more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John, are you going to say something? No? No. And anyone else have any other comments to share? Mary Pat.
I thought I wasn't going to talk at all because I didn't have very much of a background with the book. but I did want to share that I am a very avid traveler, and I had an opportunity several years ago to spend a month in India. I actually had never wanted to go to India because I had so much fear about viewing the poverty. And I have to say that I was there for 30 days. And the experience was life altering for the exact reasons that you're giving about people appearing to be very happy. And it was everywhere. It was my entire experience. It didn't matter what I was doing, where I was, what was happening. At what I saw was happiness and contentment. It's an extraordinary culture, just an extraordinary culture, and it's just becoming so much more appealing to me as I live. I am very, very anxious to learn more about this religion, this culture, this way of living, this way of not being held within myself.
Thanks, Mary Pat. I have to say that the poverty in India is not a religious choice. It happens to be because our friends in Europe, the British, took 600 ships, I believe, filled with gold. They took 45, $1 trillion out of the economy, whatever, billion, trillion, whatever, a lot of money out of the economy. And so it's an economy that's just trying to recover at this point. It is a region that has seen significant material wealth in the past, with global trades being what they were. I'm not talking 500 years, I'm talking thousands of years prior. So a lot of the richness of tradition and insight comes as a corollary to the material richness in the economy, because only then could generations of people investigate the nature of the self and propagate that learning forward. So people would like also to be materially happy, but recognize that material wealth does not necessarily correlate to internal happiness, and that internal compass is probably equally or more important. I want to say for those, if you haven't read this book, there's a few fun things I wanted to pull out to talk about, to encourage you to go back and read it. You don't need to read it all at one go, and for God's sakes, do not just read it like an English language thing. You have to really reflect on it and let that experience seep into your being. Let me give you a few fun examples, so it'll give you something to look forward to. You know how people say, go to hell, go to hell. One of those things happens in this particular book, which is what Dilip Bhai talked about, where there's a son and his father is doing some sort of a ritual and is giving away livestock. But his father is kind of a miserly guy, so he's not really giving away the best, fattest cows and goats and so on. He's giving the emaciated ones. So his son says, all right, why do you do that? And what's going on with that? And so his father, so he says, who are you going to give to me? Who are you going to give me to? And so his father, in anger and just out of spite, says, you, I give to death, as in the equivalent of go to hell. So he says, you, I'm going to give to death. So the son is a dutiful, this is young kid, probably preteens. He takes his father at his word and goes to the door of death. And he waits 3 days. And death is not there. Death personified is not there. When he comes back, he says, well, I'm sorry to make you wait for 3 days. I'll give you 3 wishes. And then the third wish is the more interesting one, where he says, all right, tell me what happens after death. The young boy says, now you have to tell me what happens after death. And so the god of death, death personified, says, all right, I'll give you unlimited wealth, women, property, whatever you want. Ask for anything else but this question. And his sons, and the boy says, well, if this is ephemeral, this is transient, what do I care for this wealth that you're planning to give me? I want to know what happens after death. That's my question. And then he gets an answer out of that. Like, that's one interesting conversation. But this isn't it. There's a rock star kind of very, very charismatic person that's mentioned here. He's married, he's got 2 wives, and he decides to renounce. He's already an ascetic, but he decides to renounce everything and head further into a solitary hermit-like existence. As he's leaving, he splits his property into his 2 wives. But one wife says, hey, wait a minute, before you go, I'd like to ask you a few questions. And she says, if you're leaving all this, you must be leaving it for something better. Then tell me that thing which is better. Why do you give me all this nonsense, this property and livestock? What am I going to do with that? Tell me that thing. And then he actually starts to articulate that. And he explains in amazing clarity that what do we love? When we love things, when we like things, what are we really liking? When we love our son, we love our son for our own sake. When we love something else, we love it for our own sake. It is for the sake of the self that everything is loved. So it is this reflection of the self in others that we are seeking. And that's what we crave. So interesting conversation between husband and wife. I urge you to look at that. More conversations. Let's see.
I have to interrupt you because Ziva has her hand up and
Siva, yes.
last 15 minutes and we're
I'm so sorry. Yes, Siva. You're unmuted. You can talk, I think.
I have to put my hand down. Okay, so I would like to invite everybody to what I think is very, very much the same philosophy, but in Western terms. And that's what in my mind is called NVC, nonviolent communication. And every Monday night from 7:30 Pacific time to 9:30 Pacific time, there's a group meeting in English that attracts people from actually all over the world. Last night I was at the session and talking to a woman from India, and the week before from China, Hong Kong, Australia, New Zealand.
Ziva, can you?
United States, yes. So my question is, I would like to send the link to either Diane or Christy, where you could pass it on to this community.
Absolutely. I forward it. Send it with description and I will send it on to everyone.
Okay, thank you, Christy.
You're welcome. Any other thoughts before I turn it back over to Gaurav for our last time of meditation together? Dilip.
Just quick note, I always tell people in the West, actually people in India have a lot of miseries, suffering because they don't have much. People living in Bay Area are so blessed, you have so much material. So we just have to do little more, give up that desire for more. Then you could be, people in the San Francisco can be, it's like a gold, smell in a gold. I mean, you can have the best of best. So you can gain so much out of this life if you can learn to live and enjoy what we have already. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilip. And now I turn it back over. Any other final comments before I turn it? John.
Thank you. Yeah, I did. I realized I did have something to add. the role of teachers is a central feature of the various Upanishads. And we know nothing about who these teachers are, except that they have some wisdom, life wisdom to impart. And I'm thinking of what seems to be a difference, but maybe it isn't so much of a difference if we look at the Christian portion of the Bible, the New Testament, where Jesus is the ultimate teacher, and other teachers model themselves upon his original messages. You know, go and spread the good word to all the people of the earth. The teachers in the Upanishad, maybe it's only one teacher, the archetypal generic teacher, but there is I see sometimes there's humor, which I think Gaurav alluded to. There's a gentleness, there's patience. And so I see similarities between the teachers as they appear in the various Upanishads and Jesus. I'm also sensing a certain difference.
Diane?
I think I was thinking a lot about that, the role of teachers and wisdom. And of course, I'm older than a lot of you, but feeling like I'm called to be a teacher to other people. And, you know, the teacher, the wisdom of the teacher is inside of ourselves, and the teacher is the person that guides the person to try to find what's inside of us already. And I just felt, after spending time with this, and it came at reading this came at a really great time for me. I lost one of my great teachers, which was Sister Marguerite, who passed away a month or so ago. And I feel the call, with wisdom and praying and understanding and meditating, that we're all, everybody in this room is called to be a teacher to somebody. So.
Thank you. And I want to share words that Vicky put in the chat that not all of you may have seen. She said, "Nothing can satisfy us but reunion with our real self." And that's a quote she found on page 41 of the introduction, which is where she is all at, because she just got the book late. "Just this has been rich enough to chew on. I am looking forward to much more illumination to be found in the rest of this book." And we are reaching near the end of our time together, and I promise the last 15 minutes to Gaurav. So Siva, send me a note. I can share it with everybody along with information on that group.
Okay.
I'll tell you a quick story. Janet, yes, please. You have to unmute yourself though.
Okay, Janet, can you unmute quickly? It's time to move on, but if you have one more comment, unmute yourself.
Not really. It's not relevant.
Okay. One more time. Gaurav, you're on.
I thought Janet was saying something.
Yeah, she said
No?
she didn't need to speak.
She didn't need to speak. Okay, good. All right. You're able to see me and hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Good. Now, the chanting of Om is held in great esteem, in high esteem in the Hindu tradition. And I'd like to transmit some of that experience to you. This will require you to sit comfortably. And if you're sitting on a chair or a bed, it's all right. However you sit is all right. The only requirement is that you sit with your back straight. The back is straight but not stiff. Just relax your shoulders. Pull your shoulders back and let go. Now close your eyes. Close your eyes and relax the expression on your face. Relax the expression on your face. The eyes are gently closed. Pull up your shoulders and let go. Just relax your shoulders. You may place your hands in your lap or on your thighs, face up or face down, whatever is comfortable. The back is straight but not too stiff. Just relax. Bring your attention to the belly. As you breathe in, let the belly expand. As you breathe out, simply let go. For the next few breaths, stay with the breath in the belly, inhaling and let the belly expand, and exhaling and letting the belly return. Gently slow down your breath. Stay with your breath. Don't let the attention anywhere else. Stay in the belly, let the belly expand, and returning back. Slow your breath down, evenly breathing in, evenly breathing out. Now, some more instructions. Keep your eyes closed and your expression relaxed. We're going to chant the Om sound. I'd like you to chant along. Make sure you're on mute so you're not interfering with other people. I'd like you to chant and breathe with me. We're going to begin with the belly. And I'll ask you to bring your attention to the belly button and then chant one sound, the R sound. I'll demonstrate first and then we'll chant it. Then we'll bring our attention to the heart center over here at the center of the chest and chant the OO sound. Then I'll ask you to bring your attention all the way up to above your eyes, inside the forehead, inside the skull. And we're going to make the sound as if enjoying that sweet and tangy candy that we've got in our mouth. We're going to make these long, elongated sounds. I'd like you to bring your attention to the experience itself. Try to submerge yourself into the experience. Don't judge it, don't label it, just dissolve into the experience of the sound. We're going to begin with the R sound. Bring your attention all the way down to the belly button. Just a little below the belly button and stay right here. Breathe into the belly button and then with me, we're going to chant with the mouth a little open and a long ah sound. Let me demonstrate. Exhale, take a deep breath. Inhale. The sound will appear to come from below the belly button. The song is a continuous long strand. And now pay attention to the sound as you chant it yourself. We'll do it for a few times. Keep listening for my cues. Exhale completely. Take a slow, long breath. Inhale. Doing this continuously. Inhale. Inhale. silence, silence. Keep your attention below the belly button and pay attention to the vibration. Paying attention to the vibration and the space that has opened up in the belly. Now bringing the attention up to the heart center, in the middle of the chest, right below the rib cage, above the belly. We're going to open the mouth in a O shape and make a oo sound like so. Low and long sound, as loud as you can. Let's do this 3 times. Exhale completely, take a deep breath. Inhale. 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 Silence. 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 Keep your attention at the heart center. Pay attention to the space and silence that has opened up at the heart center. Now bring your attention up above the eyes, inside the skull, behind the forehead. We're going to make the sound, radiating the sound out of the center and letting it penetrate our skull and forming a halo around the head. Sound like so. Now we'll do this 3 times. Inhale, take a deep inhale. 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 Silence. 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 Pay attention to this vibration that is set up in our skull area. Now we're going to chant all 3 sounds in a succession, just making it a single Om sound. I'd like you to surrender completely to the sound. As you hear it, wonder whether the sound is coming out on its own accord. We're going to make 3 long and loud Om chants, and then we'll sit in silence for a few moments, and then I'd like your reaction. Exhale completely, take a deep breath. Inhale. Making all the 3 sounds up progressively. Inhale. Where does the sound come from? Inhale. Silence. 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 Sitting in silence, observe the experience that you're sitting in the middle of. No need to label or judge, simply observe the silence. Don't open your eyes just yet. Rub your palms together to make sure your palms are warm. And then when your palms are fully warm, cup your eyeballs with the hollow of your palms. And then blink your eyes open and take in the warmth from your palms into your eyes. And then pull your palms back like an open book. Okay. I'd like to hear any reflection or any comments back from you.
Thank you. Any other people want to share a thought? I am feeling grateful for learning.